I now look 85 and married, but these effects are due to my horrid condition and political sufferance. For you should know I am a bachelor and only 58. 2 months ago I was hale and hearty, veritable man of iron. Now I am but a shadow awaiting the grim reaper. How I lost my health is a strange, sad tale. It's incredible, you might say. I lost it helping to look after a harmless box of rifles on a 200-mile railway journey one stormy winter's night. That is the actual truth, and I will tell you about it. One night, about a month and a half ago, I arrived down home, and the first thing I heard over to the lodge hall was that our old comrade, Buckshot Cheney, had finally perished of his war wounds. Not being able to sit down but on one cheek for all them years had at length proved too great of a strain. It was some surprise to me that he wanted me to accompany his worldly remnants and remains back up to the old family cemetery back up in Mullen County. Well, I recognized it being Brother Cheney, a sizable man in his day. There was no time to lose, so I headed off back into that driving storm down to the station, equipped with a little white card that had the name on it, Deacon Buckshot Cheney, Mullen Cemetery, Mullen County, etc., etc., etc. Now then, arrived to the station, I found out there on the platform where it was described to me a long pine box. I attached my white card that said Deacon Buckshot Cheney, etc., etc., etc. Then I got the box loaded safely onto the express car. At that point, I decided to rush back inside to the station house, get some fat cigars for the trip. But now then, upon my return to the platform, there was my coffin box, back again, apparently, with a young feller looking all around it, kicking it a little bit, and then he starts putting on a white card of his own with some tacks and a hammer. Why, I was outraged at this frivolous assault on the rights of the decently departed. So I rushed back out to the express car to demand an explanation, but when I got there, no, there was my coffin box, plumb in the middle of the car, hadn't been disturbed. Now, the fact is that without my suspecting it, a prodigious mistake had been made. I was helping to carry off a box of rifles that young feller had come down to the station to ship to a rifle company over in Peoria, Illinois, and he had got my corpse. Well, right then, wouldn't you know it, the conductor sang out, "All aboard!" and I hopped up onto the express car. The expressman now was already hard at work in there. He was a plain man, about 65, with a simple, honest, good-natured face and a hearty breeziness to his general style. Now then, as the train started to move off from the station, and this, my friends, is the crux of the whole doomed affair. As the train started to pull out of the station, a stranger, with a pale, drawn look on his face and a desperate glint in his eye, jumped on board of the express car for just part of a minute, and he placed a box of peculiarly mature and capable Limburger cheese on one end of my coffin box. My box of guns. Well, that is to say, I know now that it were Limburger cheese, But at that innocent and carefree time in my life, I had never heard of Limburger cheese, and was wholly ignorant of its nasty disposition and awesome powers. By now the expressman had bolted his sliding door shut, closed his window down tight, and he started in humming the sweet by and by, every so often just giving me a sort of a sad, sympathetic smile. We rode along in this fashion quite peaceable for a time, when presently I begin to notice a most evil and searching odor stealing about on the frozen air. This depressed me more than I can say, for of course I attributed the gamey perfume to the dearly departed. It near broke my heart to think that Brother Cheney, who was no sweet bouquet in the best of times, should call himself to memory in this mean-spirited fashion. And also it caused me some unease for fear that the expressman might notice and take offense. And I don't mind to tell you that with every minute that passed, that unease grew more and more. For with every minute that passed, that odor just thickened up, got to be more gamey and hard to stand. By now the expressman had got some wood together and had built up a tremendous fire in his stove. This I felt was a mistake, and might heat up consequences he did not anticipate. Mr. Thompson, for that was the expressman's name, Mr. Thompson was now busy stuffing up any stray cracks he could find in the walls, claiming that no matter how cold and wretched and awful it were outside, he'd find us snug and comfortable in here. I thought he was going about that the wrong way, but decided to say nothing and hope for the best. In the meantime, that stove got hotter and hotter, and the air got closer and closer. Pretty soon I noticed that Mr. Thompson had stopped humming the sweet by and by, and there was a ominous silence. Then he says, "Pee-wee! I reckon it ain't no spearmint and rosewood I've got loaded up in that there stove." He gasped and sputtered a little bit, and then I seen a suspicious glance come across his eyes, and he moved over there toward the end of my coffin box, my box of guns, and he stood for part of a moment right directly over that heart-breaking Limburger cheese. And then he come back at a trot, looking a good deal impressed. After a bit, he sidled up near me, and he sort of give me a hunch. He says, "Say, Cap, hey, friend of yourn?" I said, yes. "He pretty ripe, ain't he?" I said, yes. Well, Mr. Thompson at this point clapped his hands together, pulled up a pickle barrel, sat down on it, and he says, "Yes, sir, Cap." Oh, my, yes, sir. Ain't it strange, though, Cap, how all has got to go? Oh, just everyone, as you might say. No getting around it, just everybody. Man that is born of woman is of but few days and far between, as the Scripture says. And, of course, Cap, I have carried many and many's the one of 'em right here in this express car. And sometimes it's uncertain whether they's really gone or not. Oh, you think they're gone. Why, they look gone. Bodies all stiff, such as that. You think they're gone, but you don't know for sure. Why, it's just perfectly awful, Cap. I've had it happen right here in this car, and you never know when they're just going to sit bolt upright, look you in the eye, and demand an explanation. At this point, Mr. Thompson started gesturing toward my coffin box with his elbow. He says, "But Cap, I'll tell you what. That boy there ain't in no trance. No, sir, I would go bail on him. That boy back there, Cap, could raise fruit flies in Alaska. If I don't..." No! At this point, Mr. Thompson jumped from his pickle barrel, lurched over to the side of the car, broke out a pane of the glass in his window, stuck his nose out, and breathed deep for a good and solid 2 minutes. Afterwards, he invited me to take a turn, and by God, sir, I did. After a little while of growing intimacy from sharing the clean, cold air, Mr. Thompson says to me, "Say, Cap, how long has he been departed?" I will admit I decided to enlarge the facts in order to fit the probabilities. I said, 2, 3 days. Mr. Thompson gave me a pained look that clearly said, 2 or 3 months, you mean, and commenced to give his views at considerable length on the unwisdom of putting off burials for too long of a time, concluding with, "It'd been a damn sight better all around, Cap, if you'd started him along sometime last summer, say June, maybe." At this time, the fragrance, if you can call it fragrance, was just about suffocating as close as you can come at it. Mr. Thompson's face, I noticed, was turning a kind of grayish green, but he kept up a brave line of chatter. I'll give it straight to him. He says, "Oh, my, yes, Cap, I've carried many and many's the one, as I say, and some of them was considerable overdue, too. But Lordy, Lord Almighty, Cap, not one of 'em could touch that boy. He there lays over all of 'em, and he does it easy, too. Why, compared to him, them others was no more than heliotrope and sweet perfume." Now, you will admit that this did have something of the ring of a compliment to it. But goodwill or no, it was clear something had got to be done, and quick. I suggested cigars. Mr. Thompson thought that was a good idea. He says, "Why, that's a good idea, Cap. Likely it will modify him some." So we fired up and sat there puffing strong and steady for a few minutes till we give it up. Mr. Thompson was the first to throw down his cigar. He says, "It's no good, Cap. Don't modify him worth a cent. Fact is, it makes him worse, for it appears to stir up his ambition." And then he started in muttering in a dispirited kind of way about leaving the dead to bury the dead if only you could trust them to do it. Now, at this point, I noticed a strange thing. Mr. Thompson had started calling Brother Cheney by various titles. Some of 'em was civilian, some of 'em was military, and just as fast as old Buckshot Cheney's effectiveness and bite grew, why, Mr. Thompson promoted him, give him a bigger title, you know. Finally, he says, "Say, Cap, I've got me an idea. Supposin' we buckle down to it and give the colonel here a bit of a shove toward t'other end of the car, about 10 foot, say. He wouldn't have so much influence then, do you reckon?" I said, "Could be. Could very well be." So the two of us went over there to that broken window, taking turns, stuck our nose out there to breathe the deep, cold, clean air. We was fixin' to hold that breath, you see, until our labors was concluded. So we turned, got over that box, right over that mass murderin' Limburger cheese, leaned forward with all our strength and shoved into it, but Mr. Thompson's foot slipped and he slumped down with his nose, right smack on that box of wretched Limburger cheese. And his breath got out. He sputtered and gasped and he gagged. He bucked around on the floor like a bronco. Finally, he hauls back on his hind legs and makes a break for the door, heading out there to the frozen platform. He screams, "Give me the road! I'm a dying man!" Well, I went on out there to the platform afterward to hold his head till he come around. I figured it was the least I could do. Finally, he looks up at me and he says, "Well, Cap, do you reckon we started the general any?" I said, No, we hadn't budged him an inch. Mr. Thompson commenced to weep, but I discouraged him from doing so, for the tears froze to his cheek, which I felt could not be good for a man in his condition. He come around after a while and he says, "Well, Cap, it is clear to me that the governor is suited where he is. And, you know, if he don't care to be disturbed, why, he'll have his own way in the business. He's holding all the trumps, don't you see, Cap?" What I could see was that we couldn't stay out there in that icy storm. We should have frozen to death right then and there. So we went inside again and began to take turns over there at the broken window pane, until I start to notice Mr. Thompson is starting to fidget. Pretty soon he stops his fidgeting and runs toward the back of the express car and rummages around back there behind some big old crates and overstuffed burlap bags and such. And then he says, "Ha-ha!" and comes back at a prance with a pail in his hand and a glint in his eye. He says, "We're all right now, Cap. By God, I believe we've got the Commodore this time. I judge I've got the stuff right here as'll definitely take the tuck right out of him." It was a pail full of liquid spirits of carbolic acid, and he drenched everything with it. Limburger cheese and box of guns and pickle barrel and all. And then we waited, feeling kind of hopeful, but it weren't for long. For you see, when them two distinct, awesome, powerful perfumes met and mixed, they catalyzed a whole new world of smell. And then, well, Mr. Thompson and I both made a break for the door at the same time. Outside, he says, "It's no use, Cap, it's no good. The Admiral just utilizes everything we put up to modify him with, gives it his own flavor, and plays it back on us. Jehoshaphat! Don't you know it's about 100 times worse in there now than when he first got going?" We went back inside the express car after we's pretty nigh frozen solid. But good God Almighty, we couldn't stay inside. So we just waltzed back and forth, freezing and thawing and gagging by turns, until at last Mr. Thompson says, "I can't stand it, Cap. I just can't stand it." And he made another run down to the end of the express car. This time he comes back with one of them overstuffed burlap bags. He comes up to me with a solemn look in his eye and he says, "Cap, I'm going to chance the senator just one more time. Just this once. And if we don't fetch him this time, Cap, why, we got to throw up the sponge and crawl off the canvas and pray that heaven has mercy on our sorry hides." That bag was filled with dirty old chicken feathers, dried sour apple, cut leaf tobacco, rags and old shoes, sulfur and old cow manure, and I don't know what all. He dumped it out onto a piece of sheet metal and set fire to it. And this time This time, when that fire got going and the smoke started to rise, I couldn't see myself how even the corpse could stand it. Everything that went before was just poetry, plain and simple compared to that smell. But mind you, that original smell stood right up out of it, just as awesome and powerful as you please. Fact is, them other smells just seemed to give it a stronger grip. And my friends, human language does not have the words with which to express how powerful rich it was. Mr. Thompson suffocated and fell through the door to the platform straight away. I was mighty near gone myself when I tripped over him. Last words I ever heard Mr. Thompson say was, "He's done for his cap. The President has stayed the course and done took us with him to serve in his heavenly cabinet of the elect." I think he went on to say something about the whole damn Congress being a pack of yellow dog nincompoops, and he would never vote the party line again. But by that time I was delirious and cannot say for sure he died a redeemed man. We were taken from that frozen platform an hour or so later at the station, insensible, incoherent, and frozen stiffer than a couple of icehouse mackerel. I have awoken from my deathbed coma only this afternoon to learn that my demise has been brought about by a box of harmless rifles and a mess of stinking Limburger cheese. I am a goner, boys. And to tell you the truth, it comes as a great relief. For somehow, breathing just don't have the same appeal to me as once it did. Nobody knows what happened to Buckshot Cheney. There's rumors, though, that he abides forever in an undisclosed, secured location.